Hello, I'm Rick Crosslin, and I believe in science. And if I believe in science, that means I believe in medicine. And if I believe in medicine, I believe in vaccines and vaccination. That is a pretty popular topic that I think all of us should know a little bit more about. And that's what I hope to do today. You see, we live in a different world. Many years ago, about 200 years ago, you probably, if you lived in the country, you probably never traveled more than 6 miles from where you were born your entire life to when you died. But if you lived in a city, that was different because ships, trains, in fact, after the Industrial Revolution, people from all over the world started coming closer together. And when we came closer together, we brought our diseases that are inside our body and outside our body closer to each other. In fact, so many people have died around the world when new people explored and brought in other diseases to the indigenous people. Indigenous means the people that used to live there that had no way to protect themselves, no immune system that had seen that new disease. So I'd like to do a short history of vaccinations, and actually that's the history of people and discoveries as the world became more industrialized. And our story starts thanks to some research I've done with National Geographic back in the city of Boston in 1721, because it was rumored that the angel of death, smallpox, was coming to Boston. Now, scientists have estimated over 300 million people have died from smallpox around the world. But in 1721, we didn't know a lot about hygiene and germs. People thought, how they had thought for thousands of years that the 4 parts of your body had to be in harmony to stay healthy. They didn't have microscopes, and they knew very little about how people protected themselves from diseases, germs, bacteria, and viruses. There was a minister by the name of Cotton Mather. He, along with another doctor there in Boston by the name of Zebediah Boylston, and an African-born slave by the name of Onesimus, who came up with this idea that he shared with Mathers. He said that in his country, when people got sick, they would take some of the pus from a person sick and they would rub it into a cut of another person. And when they did that, they did not get that sick from the first disease. Now, a disease back then that hurt a lot of people was called cowpox, sent from cows to people. And people who study diseases, they have a term for that when a person can get sick from an animal disease. Now, cowpox was bad, but it was not near as bad as smallpox. And a pox is like a small red dot, a volcano erupting on your skin with pus coming out of it. And if you got smallpox, chances are 2 things would happen. You'd either die, or your face, your body, your tongue, your eyes would be covered with these pusses, these poxes that would scar you for the rest of your life if they didn't kill you. So here are these 3 people, almost lost in history, that took this practice that came from other parts of the world, like Africa, and they would take the pus from the smallpox and rub it into a person. Now, nobody at first thought that was a good idea, and most people were against it. It was not called vaccination, it was called virilation or inoculation, and virulent or virilation, putting this in your body. And Mathers was not well liked for that. In fact, it was said that a firebomb was thrown through his window. It didn't go off, but it had a note that said, "May the pox be on you," a phrase that meant a lot back in those days. Well, that was the start in 1721 that science realized that we could stop, contain, pandemics. It was something we could do something about. The word pandemic is something, pan means worldwide. Now, 70 years later, we go to England. And in England, there was a doctor who, as a boy, had gotten the cowpox and was very sick because when they used that inoculation, that virilation back when he was a young boy. But back in those days, in 1796, or even before that, they would bleed you and cut you and drain your bad blood out. So he remembers this as a terrible thing. So he decided to take the serum off of someone who was sick with cowpox and put it into somebody to protect them from smallpox. And so that was the very first start of modern vaccination. Now you wonder, where did the word vaccination come from? Well, the word vaccination, vacca, is Latin for cow. So when you get a vaccination, you can thank cowpox and both of those two scientists. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. And it has a lot of implications for us today. You see, everybody, doctors, got excited in 1796 about a way to protect the country, the world, from smallpox. Because boats were traveling and a boat would come in, and if someone had that smallpox, it would transmit to other people and entire cities could be decimated. It was really bad. So a lot of people got excited. In fact, our friend Edward Jenner Edward Jenner, who did this first vaccination, became the vaccination clerk of the world. He shared this idea. And then along comes the King of Spain, Charles IV. And Charles IV, since he was in charge of a large empire that went around the world, thought, I should send people to all of our countries to vaccinate the world. And what we really learned from there is that one country cannot just vaccinate themselves and think that that's going to help the world. Because if you don't vaccinate all the world, it will come back by boat, ship, plane, or who knows how. So that was a pretty important thing in 1796. So in 1803, they sent this ship all around the world, took 3 years to vaccinate. And you wonder, how do they keep that going? Well, this is kind of the strange part. They had young boys from an orphanage, and they would inject those boys with the cowpox, and they would keep that vaccination serum going. Now, the history goes really quite quickly after that. People like one of my favorites, Louis Pasteur, who thought that, he and Robert Koch believed that germs cause things. Pasteur found a rabies vaccination. And then we had other people like, that was in the 1800s, Jonas Salk, who worked on polio, a vaccination for polio. We had the plague, and we had cholera, which was, all these things were diseases. Now, a disease has either germs, bacteria, or viruses that can hurt us. Now, along comes a guy in 1929, a scientist by the name of Alexander Fleming, and he discovered penicillin in a dish in a lab. But he didn't put it together that what a miracle drug that would be. It took another scientist from Oxford, England, by the name of Howard Florey and his team that produced penicillin in 1941. It was the miracle drug. You see, a lot of times when people would get scratched or hurt or go to the hospital, a small scratch from like a rose thorn could cause an infection and sepsis that could kill you. Really. And so penicillin, the miracle drug, could stop that. Now, along comes World War II, and before we came back to recross the English Channel, they had made hundreds of thousands of doses of penicillin to take with them. Because in most conflicts, it's not the other person that kills you, it's the infection or the disease that kills you. So that is a lot. Now, some of the vaccines we've made over the world, and I've had so many of these. There's been smallpox and rabies and a plague, hepatitis A, B, pneumonia, HPV, meningitis, anthrax, shingles, rubella. yellow fever, and the DTaP, like diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, tuberculosis, mumps, polio, measles, cholera, and even the influenza. Now, we know a lot today, and it's very exciting in the news, about the COVID-19 vaccination. And so I have had almost every one of those vaccinations. Why? Because I was not a kid that lived 6 miles and grew up. My dad was in the Air Force, and my family, we traveled and lived in 25 different cities and about 3 different countries. I lived in Egypt. I've traveled to Brazil many times. I've traveled to India, China, and every time that I traveled, I knew I might come in contact with other people. So I actually have 6 shot records that go all the way back to almost when I was born, that have from the World Health Organization, that keep track of all of the vaccines I've had. I remember, like, in 1959, I looked at this, I had a smallpox vaccination. I had a polio vaccination. In 88, I had a yellow fever. And in 1958, I had a diphtheria, tetanus. I've had so many tetanus shots because those vaccines protect me. So that's just a real short history of vaccines. Now, I'll tell you, how does a vaccine work? And I borrowed some things from my friend Charlie, who has this cool castle here, to explain to you maybe how a vaccine works. But in science, there's so much more that you can learn by either reading or in your classroom or on the internet about how vaccines work. So basically, a vaccine tricks your body to make antibodies that fight the real antigens. A lot of new words there. Antibodies, antigens, and pathogens. Now, a pathogen is like a bad thing from a disease. A pathogen comes from the bacteria, virus, or germs, and we call those pathogens. And they send stuff that can get in your body, and those are the things, those are the antigens, kind of like the weapons of the pathogens. I know it's a lot of gens, but luckily we have things in our body that will fight those, and that's called our immune system. Now, to explain this better, let's talk about the things that are outside your body and the things that are inside your body. Like this castle here, the things that can be outside this castle and the things that are inside this castle. So the outside is the bad guys, that the pathogens and the antigens, which are like toxic to us and can make us ill. But inside our body, we have an immune system. It's like all of our systems. And systems, as you know, are made up of cells, tissue, organs, and they work together in systems. And the inside of our castle, or our body here, is our cell. This is the very important part, the animal cell inside of every piece of tissue of your body. And inside that cell is a thing called the nucleus, which is kind of like the brains of your cell. And it's the way that this cell can reproduce and make another cell, make a copy of itself. And that's happening all the time. Like, for example, your skin, you're always making new blood cells, skin cells. In fact, you're making almost all new cells. But science, I read that the cells in your eyes may be the same cells you were born with. That's crazy. But anyway, on the inside, you have white blood cells called lymphocytes. Now, these white blood cells are like the soldiers of your immune system, and they're always inside of you, and they're always being made new, and they are the ones that make antibodies to fight the antigens. Now, since we're using the analogy of your body to this castle, I want to tell you 3 important things you can do. Number 1, a castle has a moat, and this moat is filled with water. You can wash your hands and use soap, just like a castle, to keep out some of the germs. Number 2, there are things guarding like a door. Now, your body, you have 3 basic ways things can get in: through your mouth and through your nostril and your eyes. But luckily, we have hair in our nose that traps things coming in our nose. Gross, I know. And inside our mouth, nose, and eyes, we have mucous membranes. Now, mucous membranes are the slimy kind of stuff, but that's really good for trapping stuff that wants to get in. And kind of like the gate on this castle right here, which I'll show you in just a second. And so this third thing is this mask, which can be like putting the gate up on a castle. And washing your hands is kind of like the moat, which leaves the most important organ, I think, in your body. One of your largest organ is your skin. Now, your skin has 3 layers. It's always growing, always giving off and protecting you from things that want to get inside your body. And so our castle analogy is the bricks of this castle wall. So let's take a look at how this castle is like your body, with washing your hands, keeping your skin healthy, and wearing a mask. So our castle has 3 defenses. It has a strong wall like your skin. It has a moat, which I'm going to put some water in right here. And this moat is like washing your hands with soap. And it also has a drawbridge right here that can open and close, is like a mask you can wear. So that's the analogy between this castle, your immune system, and those pathogens out there. And so here in the castle, we have the king and the queen who run the castle, and we have the RNA wizard. And it's the wizard who manufactures more cells, or more white cells, which we call the lymphocytes. Here's our lymphocytes knights. And the lymphocytes use antibody weapons. Here's a flag antibody. Here's a shield antibody. Here is a green shield antibody. And so they are pretty protected. If something comes along, they can stop it. And what's coming along? Oh, a disease, a virus, a bacteria. And it happens to be this pathogen dragon. This pathogen dragon that will send as its weapons antigens. And so we wonder what this pathogen dragon, what type of antigens come. And so when he comes up to the castle, they have the 3 defenses: the wall, washing the hands, the moat, and the gate. And so we're going to send out our first first soldier to see what happens. And he comes on out, and he's going to try to use what he already has as defenses: lymphocyte, white blood cell, and he's got a shield. So the dragon lymphocyte, his shield stops it, and the dragon pathogen, let's see what antigens, he comes up and he crushes because they weren't expecting the big claws, and he goes away. All right, so now the king sees this, RNA wizard sees this. We should have been protected for that, but now they know that the wizard can make a better, stronger shield. And out comes now a new shield, because they've already seen the dragon and he can stomp them. So now here comes the pathogen dragon back. And what's going to happen? Well, he tries to stomp him, but this shield is much better because the immune system has made a better antibody. But there's a problem. We didn't know that this dragon can also has another bad thing, and it bites, and unfortunately for this guy, he is no longer with us because we didn't know about the dragon's teeth and strong bite. So this pathogen dragon walks off again. The king and the queen know this, and they go, let's see, we need something better. The RNA wizard, now that we've seen the teeth, now that we've seen the claws, they make this guy right here. And he has a long spear. This antibody comes on out, just in case. But you know what? Before they do that, the queen, she's very smart. She goes, instead of waiting for the pathogen to get here, why don't we go out and see what's going on? So they send the wizard on out there, and he goes and he sees the dragon, and he sees that the dragon has fire breath. We didn't even know it. So he comes back and he prepares the new lymphocyte with an antibody to stop fire. And so here comes the dragon thinking, I'm a pathogen, I can stomp you, I can bite you. My secret weapon you don't know about is fire. And he gets ready to, but before he can do it, they are prepared, and he uses his special flag to squirt water. And now the dragon can only do a little burp, a little bit of smoke, and off goes the dragon. And that is kind of how your immune system works. If it knows about the pathogen ahead of time, it can make, through RNA wizard, it can make soldiers and knights that have the antibodies to fight the antigens of the pathogen. And that's what a vaccination is. When you get a vaccination, it's taking some of the dead or inactive parts or what it looks like of the pathogen, and it puts it in your immune system, and your cells make that and has a whole castle of knights and soldiers ready to fight if that pathogen shows up. And I'll tell you, my body, I've had over probably 50 vaccinations in my life. My castle is strong. But that doesn't mean I don't wash my hands and I don't do the things that I can do, keeping my skin healthy. And if I'm around some pathogens, I can wear a mask. And I hope you do too. Now, you are not a stranger to vaccinations. All the kids, all of you have had vaccinations, series of vaccinations when you're a child. So you don't get really sick with measles or whooping cough or tetanus. You know, all of those are shots that you've already had. So this is not new to you. I just think you may not know exactly how the immune system works and how it can help you. Science discoveries are made to help us. And I think it's important to know the history and the people that made them. You know what? I look at my shot records here, and I still have time for another vaccination, the COVID-19 that I plan to get. And I hope you do too. And I hope you encourage others to get it. That'll help all of us, because I'm getting mine to keep my castle strong from pathogen dragons that are here now and that will surely come to us in the future. Hope you enjoyed this. I'm Rick Crosslin. Get vaccinated. Oh, hey Charlie, thanks for the cool castle and the knights and this awesome green pathogen dragon. I didn't know how to make his fire shoot out. Maybe you do.